and we are live. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. Tonight, Andrew is back hosting along with me.
Yes.
Andrew, please introduce yourself to the viewers.
Hi, guys. How are you? Andrew Green. I am your host the first Sunday in each month. And I am a willing participant, just overjoyed in just talking about the gospel and sharing and hoping that we all get something out of these sessions. Um, that's the goal. That is
Yes.
the goal. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And for those who tune in, please feel free to post your questions or comments. How do you feel about rebuilding trust? And, Andrew, I'd like to thank you for choosing this topic. I
Mhm.
had something else in mind, but you know what? I believe this was the topic we were meant to do.
Right, right,
So
right. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Rebuilding
Mhm.
trust is a big one. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'll ask you first and foremost,
Mhm.
does forgiveness play a role in rebuilding trust?
Right, right, right. So I mean, it is the first step. It would be the first step um, in repairing and rebuilding trust after um, that betrayal. Whether that betrayal uh, is as a result of infidelity or to some lesser extent a lie or as a result of addiction or something of that nature, but yes, forgiveness is the first step. Apologizing the person that caused that caused that that harm, that offense, that caused the trust to be broken, has to uh, be uh, be honest. So in that same breath as forgiveness, you have to be honest in your pursuit of forgiveness. So you have to be sincere in asking for forgiveness. You have to apologize without um, the temptation of what would I say, without trying to justify any behavior, without trying to equally dispense blame for your action. You
Don't try to
just
minimize the
don't,
offense,
right,
you
exactly,
know, take
just
responsibility for your actions.
right,
Because if
yeah,
it's a sincere apology,
yes,
right, it's not, you will be honest and forthright,
yeah,
and you'll accept the other person's hurt,
you're right.
maybe their anger and frustration. I mean,
Mhm.
does that play a role, Andrew?
Oh yes, yes. So as you are uh, outlining uh, where you went wrong and you're seeking in a sincere manner forgiveness, um, like I said, just say it, own what you did, what was wrong, um, and leave it at that, and allow the person that 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 hurt person, um, give them the space to to um, to communicate, however that may whatever that may look like, um, their emotions. You have to sit in that and allow them to vent, to communicate their 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 hurt. You have to give them that space. Yes.
Let me ask you this. So if a person comes, they want to reestablish the relationship,
Hmm.
and they, let's start anew, let's work it all out. But
Hmm.
as they're talking to you, you're
Hmm.
not hearing a sincere apology.
Hmm.
You're not hearing, and you get that gut feeling, you know what?
Hmm.
We're going back to square one.
Okay.
This
Okay.
individual hasn't really changed,
Hmm.
because what I'm hearing is this person wants to get their foot back in. the
Mm,
door, right?
right.
But it's going to be back to the old tricks, you
Mm,
know,
mm,
once they feel like, hey, okay, I got her back or got him back, however it is, you
right.
know?
Yeah.
So if you as an individual do not believe it's a sincere apology, I
Hmm.
mean, do you agree that you can say to the person, look, I don't think you're really ready to rebuild trust yet. I don't think you're ready to reestablish this relationship. I'd like you to take some time and
Hmm.
really think things over. Like, is this what you really want?
Right.
Right?
You're right.
Right?
And right. You're quite true. I mean, so the process in rebuilding the trust, starts with the person um, offering their sincere apologies. If you what who is receiving that, if you don't feel like one, you're in a position to rebuild the trust. You're just not there yet, or two, you don't get that sense that the person is truly sincere. They have they haven't. You get a sense that they're still withholding something. They didn't really give you the full story of what went wrong. Then yes, you have that right to say, in that open communication, to say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I don't feel, this is how I
Yes.
feel, that I don't feel safe
I
uh,
think it's important
in
that we
this
bring
moment.
this up. I'd like to welcome Mikey. Mikey, thank you so much for tuning in. And I
Welcome,
say this,
welcome. Yeah.
Andrew, because there are relationships that sometimes we hold on to that we really shouldn't. And we
Right.
do so badly want to believe that this
Mhm.
person is sincere,
Right.
setting ourselves up for failure.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's why I brought that up,
Yeah.
because I think we
Yeah.
really have to be careful. You want that
Yeah.
sincerity, but you have to know that it's real. And
Right.
for the person that's going with the apology, wanting to reestablish the relationship,
Mhm.
if you know in your heart that you're not finished with your games and your immature behavior, whatever it
Mhm.
is, then leave that individual alone.
Right.
Because I think that you have to know, especially if that person is trying to heal. It's like, for instance, in a marriage,
Mhm.
right? If one of the partners has cheated or whatever has taken place, but it's an habitual thing,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Children are involved.
Right. Right.
Children are exposed to these things.
Right.
So
Right.
both people have to have the maturity to really understand not only what do they want for themselves, but for their family, for their children as a whole. Now, yeah,
Mhm.
we're talking about rebuilding trust, but
Mhm.
we also have to look on both sides of the coin, because
Right.
sometimes for some people, like I said, for some of us, especially me as a woman,
Mhm.
before I got divorced, I always wanted to believe the story that he would come with, because I wanted the family to stay intact. But
Right.
eventually, coming to that point, I'm wasting my time, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I feel like I have to bring that up, because I'm hoping that those who are watching tonight will really have a understand how serious this is,
Right.
because we don't want people to keep on being hurt. This is we want to promote healing.
Right.
So you have to know that if you're going with that apology, that it is sincere. So that leads to my next question, Andrew. How careful should we be in placing our trust? Should I trust you just because you're saying words? Or I
Mhm.
mean, what about the actions?
Okay. So when that meeting of mind comes around and the person is offering that forgiveness, that apology, um, and like you said, yeah, you have that opportunity at that moment to say, okay, I'm going to accept your apology, right? Um, and the rebuilding of the trust can come um, in a variety of ways. It can be, I'm going to rebuild the trust in myself so that I can be healed and I can move on with with the family or by myself and move on with my life, right? But so you have to still rebuild that trust even as that hurt person if you
Yes.
want to move on from that person. But if you're
Yes.
going to move on with that person, right, what that now is going to entail is after the apology, then there has to be transparency, right? So if we decide that we are going to um, work on our relationship, then what we're going to have to establish structure, and one of those first thing is transparency. So
Yes.
that now means you have to be completely transparent with what happened, right, and the possibility of what could happen. So
Yes.
when um, when I when I ask you, when I see something happening and I'm asking you, um, is everything okay? I want you to be honest with me to say yes or no. Like, okay, I get a sense of whatever start that caused that rupture in the first place, that is coming back, so that we can address it, right?
Right, because it's okay to say, you know what, I still feel a little insecure.
Right.
I am not sure if I can trust you. And let me ask you this now, Andrew, because it's something that I've noticed in the past.
Mhm.
If the person is being, Mikey's saying, if apologies aren't voluntary, you're already in deep waters.
Oh,
Yes.
you're right, right.
Yes, that's
Yes.
the truth, Mikey.
Yes, yes,
that,
yeah,
that
right.
is gospel
The-
truth right
right.
there.
You have to come with the apology, with that sincere apology, before the person um, um, request it of you.
If you have to
Right,
bully a person or yell at them for an apology, it's not an apology, right?
right,
It's a
exactly.
band-aid. And
Yeah.
now if a person is, because look, Andrew, for instance, let's say every time you have your phone and your phone, then hey, you say to your wife, I'll be right back, and you step outside.
Oh,
That's
right.
been an issue. And then you're doing the same thing again. And then she says, Andrew, why are you still going outside when you use your
Right.
phone? And
So
you
this is
just,
what I'm talking
listen,
about,
I'm
Brie.
the man, and
Right. Okay. So
defensiveness. I
Brie.
mean, you get what I'm saying?
Right. So
Yes.
Brie. So to just to finish back my thought when I said that that second step in being transparent. So you apologize first. Then
Yes.
second is that transparency and the structure that you're building. So you now, let's just say, in this case, the wife would say,
Yes.
okay, in order for me to feel safe and to feel protected with and around you, then these are the things I expect of you. And you have to, and it's best not just to verbalize it, which is the first step, but you have to write it. It has to be a contract so that the person can see it and be held accountable to. And you should also have something that where you can feel accountable to, so that um, you may say, okay, when, like you mentioned, the phone rings. If the phone rings in and around the house in my presence, then that phone call must be had right there in front of me. If you may want to say, and this depends on what that breach of
Right, right, right,
was, right?
right.
So you may say, okay, we are going to exchange passwords. So I need a password to your phone, to your social media. We're going to share that. I get, that again, you will have to tailor all these things to your particular
Right. I get it.
circumstance,
I get
right?
it.
So that's the structure. There are apps that you can um, apply to your phones that will um, detail where you are, all right?
Andrew, I've seen a couple people that I know that have those apps. And I remember saying to myself, boy, if I have to have that app,
I
we
know,
don't need to be together,
but
because I might as well be in a prison.
I know, but
It's like
yeah,
there has to be some level of trust. But no, I get it. And
but
I
but
get
this is
why
what we're
some
talking
people,
about,
yeah.
to rebuild the trust, so
Yes,
that
yes, yes.
when you say you're going to be where you are, then you have to be where you are, where you said you were supposed to be, and you have to come home or be at that meeting at a certain time. So these are all the small. So this is the structure that has to be in place. If you don't do that, then what's going to happen? Everything is going to be based on assumptions, and the person can't read your mind, and then you're always going to now be your mind is just going to be racing and flooding with all of the possibilities, and you will not have any peace, and
Exactly.
he will not have any peace, because he will then always be thinking that you are now blaming him and then bringing up back his shame when he is honestly trying, but then because there's nothing written and we're not working together, the trust will never be rebuilt. So in that transparency, you have to have structure, and you have to write down what it will take to make me feel safe and protected and loved again in this relationship, so that he can know exactly what he needs to work on. um, so that is the second step, and
Yeah.
we'll go on as we talk. Yeah.
Right, right. And it could be maybe the woman could be the one that
Right.
stepped out on the marriage. It could be either
Exactly.
way, right? But
Exactly.
the thing is, when you have approached this person wanting to
Mhm.
reconcile, wanting to do whatever it is,
Yeah.
then you have to be honest enough. If you know what,
Mhm.
boy, I can't stop looking at other women, or I can't
Right.
stop looking at other men. So you know what?
Right.
Be honest with that
Yeah.
individual,
Exactly.
because I believe that at the end of the day, you have to be true to who and what you are,
Right.
right? And I
Right.
think we
Yeah.
have to be able to we have to learn to love in a way that we have love for ourselves, where if a person is being honest with you, look,
Mhm.
it's not you, it's me. I
Right.
feel that we have to because sometimes I think people lie because they're afraid
There.
of
Right.
the reaction, right?
Which just makes everything worse. So they have this
Yes.
problem, and then they can't be honest to the person that they love about their problem, because they feel as though they're going to be judged. So
Yes.
it's a vicious cycle. So
Yes.
honesty is just the best thing. If she loves you and you love her, and you're saying, honey, this is my problem, or she says, darling, this is my problem, right? I'm not making an excuse. I'm not saying, all women are like this, or the
Right,
man or
right,
the man is
right.
going to say, well, you need to get over it because all men are like it. No, never ever say those statements.
That's true.
But when you're sitting down and you're having these conversations, and you feel that thing in you bubbling up, that flesh, whatever it is, whether it's excessive spending, or pornography, or whatever it is, um, you have to be able to come together. Remember that you guys are a team,
Yes.
to say, honey, this is how I feel. I need your help. I don't need your judgment. I don't need you to bring up what happened in the past, but I need your help. I feel like
Yes.
I'm going to slip, and I need this from you. So that is also part of the contract. How can you help me? And again, for the person that was hurt, is how can you help me to feel safe? That, so it's a team building, and everybody has to be.
That's an excellent point, Andrew. And I have to say this: if a
Yeah.
person's coming to you with their vulnerability,
Mm,
you have to see that as a gift,
it
because
is.
they are showing you, this is how
Yeah.
much I trust you. I'm
Exactly.
feeling pretty vulnerable right now, and I'm
Right.
coming to you with my vulnerability.
Right.
So you can't use it against that person
Right.
later on in an argument, or use it to embarrass them,
Right.
right? Because
And
that's where I
yeah.
think a lot of us go wrong.
Right. And that in itself could have been the initial betrayal, where the person was vulnerable, and you, in a very slight manner, you're out with your friends, everybody, and you just mentioned something about your spouse that they shared with you in private, and you just blurted out. And
Yes.
now that could be the avenue of this betrayal, this mistrust. So it's not just infidelity. We don't
Right,
always want
right.
to
There's
focus on
so
that
many
victim,
different
but
things that you can.
those things that that person now could be like, oh my goodness, I just shared something. How could you do that? And so now they're now looking at from a distance. This something happened, a tear happened in the relationship, and trust needs to be rebuilt. Yeah. So as you're going through, as you're repairing, it is important to 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 safeguard each other's emotions, each other's weaknesses, and say, and if the person comes back and say, you know what, can you tell me again what happened? That hurt person may be like, probably they didn't get it. Like they don't understand why you did what you did. So they may come back even after you apologize the first time. They're going to come back a second and a third time, and you have to be patient to be able to repeat and expand on why you are apologizing, and not try to rush that person and say, well, I told you already. Why as many
It's a
times as it
journey.
takes,
It's
you
a it's
have
it's a journey.
it's a
So,
journey. It is a
and
journey.
which is leading to my next question, Andrew.
Mhm.
Before I can trust myself or anyone else, I need to trust God. Would you
Mhm.
agree? Because
Oh,
and I say this because I can tell you there was a time, and I've shared this before, where I didn't trust myself because
mhm.
I'd made so many poor choices,
Right.
and I didn't trust my decision making,
Mhm.
and I did not want to trust anyone. I
Mhm.
mean, I trusted no one. As time has gone on and healing has taken place, the more I the more I trust God, and I'm learning that relationship is deepening, I'm learning to trust myself. Now my heart is open to trust others. It's been a process.
Mhm.
So would you agree, before I can trust myself or anyone else, I need to be able to trust God?
Yes, I completely agree with that statement, but I'm not saying this to someone who is listening, who is not a Christian, and I wouldn't want that person to think that, oh well, the only way to rebuild trust is to be a
No,
Christian. No,
listen, when
but
I say this, I'm saying this personally,
you
because you have
exactly,
some people
yeah,
who are not Christians, but they do believe in God. They
right,
do, they do believe in God. So
right,
I'm just saying this.
yeah,
If I, as I am trusting God, it's like I am learning. Like, if,
mhm,
for instance, if you were coming to tell me something and you're not sincere,
right,
I will know.
yeah,
I will just know it. I
right,
will just
yeah,
know it because I feel, and that's, it's just an encouragement to others.
right, yeah,
Listen, work on that personal relationship because it's going to help you in the long run with
mhm,
your relationship with others. It
right,
can help you build them up and know which ones to walk away from
yeah,
at the
yeah,
end of the day. Because many of us, Andrew, and I can't speak for men, but I can speak for myself as a woman, we
mhm,
have been crushed over the years, had our hearts broken
right,
from the
yeah,
same repeated behavior over
right,
and over. How many of us have gone from one cheated man to the next
right,
because we
yeah,
didn't learn, and we didn't trust our gut, or we didn't want to listen
you
even
know,
though
right,
we knew
yeah.
in our heart,
Right,
right?
right, and yeah, and just to piggyback on what you're saying, right? um, in the topic rebuilding trust. So, Bree, you may be into, so you may. I'm not speaking as if to say I know your
Right, right, right. And
circumstance.
I
I'm
get it, I
just
get it.
just use that as an example. So let's just say you went into your marriage, right? But because of prior relationships that eroded and destroyed and ripped apart trust in you, you brought that into your marriage. So you have to rebuild trust, not with something that your husband did, because he's
No,
not
you're
privy
right,
to
you're
that.
right.
But you have to, but you're bringing that baggage into this relationship,
So
and
that's
he's
so
now
that's so that's the point. Like, trusting myself. You know, we
Right.
have to learn to trust ourselves, trust our decision making process,
Right.
trust our guts. Like
Mhm.
Andrew, I mean, if you know someone has come to you and they're, you know, a friendship that fell apart, but
Mhm.
you will know in your heart whether that person is sincere or not.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is from a place of making a wise decision versus
Mhm.
desperation. Oh, I
Right.
want this connection so badly. I'm willing to overlook, you
Oh,
know,
right.
what I
Right.
know is wrong. You know,
Right.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to go back to the question, um, as a Christian myself, I firmly believe that um, with God in that triangle between me, my wife, and God, um, that my relationship with God helps me, gives me an additional structure in my marriage to say, um, I will not do this offense to my wife, because how could I do that to God? So not only am I accountable to my wife, right, but I'm also accountable to God. So in that, so having a relationship with God, being a Christian, um, in so many ways, in countless ways, benefits the relationship, and puts safeguards in it, and also helps, even if I breached um, the trust. So it, us having a Christian relationship can
I have
also
to say
help
this.
in
I
the
have to say this, Andrew. I have to say this. Though. I
Yeah,
have to say this.
sure.
There are dishonest Christians out there too. And there are Christians that cheat. They come, praise the Lord.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
night before they were doing whatever. So I'm just saying,
yeah, yeah.
I can't, like, if I meet someone new, I can't just say, oh, he goes to this church, so
Mhm.
I can put my trust in him. Do you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? We
But I
have to.
said Christian. I didn't say church. I didn't say church ago. I said a
No,
Christian.
but Christian, but listen,
Yeah,
Christian, like I said, I know a lot. I know a lot
yeah,
of Christians, Andrew. And like I said, I'm a Christian. I'm not a perfect Christian. You
right,
get what I'm saying?
yeah,
So infidelity takes place in the church all the
right,
time,
yeah,
right? So let's just be
yeah.
honest about
Right.
that.
But so I'm not saying that because I'm a Christian, infidelity will not occur. I
Right.
didn't say that. I'm saying that as a Christian, um, I have that structure of the Bible, of Christianity, to help me to have a good marriage, and also to help me in repairing trust. So that so as Christians, um, I have a you know I already know as a Christian that I'm not going to put my spouse, in my case my wife, or in your case your husband, but I'm not going to put them on this pedestal to say, well, they would never do this,
Right.
because
Of course.
right,
That's the
right.
biggest mistake you can make.
So therefore, as in so what I'm saying is, with that in mind, it helps me to already know that this is possible. I'm going to enter the marriage, not like the other person who is completely unaware, and they would be taken off guard when the breach occurs. But for me, because I didn't put that person there, then if and when it happens, I I already told myself, we had the conversation that we are married for life. So I am married to her with the knowledge that even if something happens, I am still married to her, and I'm still committed to her. So that's what I'm saying. That these are the benefits of having God in your life, of being a Christian. I'm not saying as a churchgoer, but so it helps. It just helps. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So let's talk about keeping score, holding on to
Mm,
painful memories in our memory bank. You
mm,
know, I remember, and I've been guilty of it, you
mm,
know, arguments with my ex-husband in particular. I could go back 10, 20 years to when
Mm.
this was done, when that was
Right.
done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think when you keep bringing up the past,
Right.
using it as ammunition,
Yeah.
then it creates a hopeless situation,
Uh,
right? But I
yeah.
think if you have a repeated behavior,
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
that person is using, old memories as ammunition because that's what you've given them to go by.
Right.
So I want you to address it from both sides.
Mm.
Why is a person keeping score?
Mhm.
But
Mm.
let's also talk about the damage that keeping score does, because it's always going to bring you back to square one. Just
Right.
in your
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. So, one of the difficult phases in rebuilding trust is um, committing yourself after the offense, being totally committed to being vulnerable again, um, to this person who caused that heartache, right? So, so nobody's saying that you're going to forget what took place. We're not, as you rebuild and you rebuild that safety and love and protection with that person, you're never going to forget it, but you have to be able to reframe it and to be able to put it in a place in your memory where it does not consistently bubble up to the top and causes friction going forward. So
Yes.
so that's what you're saying. um, and that happens only because um, the individuals were working off assumptions. They didn't do the work. They just simply went along without doing the hard work. So the feelings were never addressed. The hurt was never addressed. We just simply went on for going on sake, whatever that, whether it going on because we just didn't know, or we're going on to just to save face, or we're just going on for the kids' sake. But the hard work was never done, and therefore, um, you still feel hurt.
Yes.
18 years later, you still feel hurt. Why? Because you just never addressed.
And
And
it still feels fresh
and it still
sometimes.
feels fresh, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially when the other person, the offender, does something that even slightly reminds you of what took place 18 years ago.
Yes.
So it just kicks in, and you're like,
Mhm.
I know. So what happens now for that person? Um, he or she could be like, okay, I'm trying, but I know I was the initial person that stepped out, but this recycling is taking too much out of me. Um, the situation isn't getting better, so am I just going to just continue doing what I was doing, or you know, it's almost like your soul dies. So it's like you're just surviving in the relationship, but you're not living, you're not thriving. So it just becomes really a dead relationship.
Yes.
So time doesn't do anything to it. The hard work has to be put in.
It has to be done. It
Has to be
has to
put
be
in.
done.
Yeah.
You can't wish it away.
Yeah.
You can't be angry that the person is still
Right.
hurt.
You,
I
yeah.
think
Yeah.
you have to be willing to
Yeah.
accept that now. At the same time,
Yeah.
if you're willing to forgive and forget, you have to forget to move on, right? You
Yeah.
can't keep bringing up the
You
same
can't.
thing over,
Right.
because you'll never heal. You're
Right.
dragging the person back to the
Right.
incident, and it's just a never ending cycle. All right,
Exactly.
Andrew.
Yeah.
So the next question is, there are some people we need to forgive, however, they no longer belong in our lives. Do you
Mhm.
agree?
Oh yeah, yeah. This goes back to how we started. The
Hmm.
person may come to you and say, "Bree, I am sorry. I offer this apology," um, but you have to recognize that when you did what you did, you made a decision, whether you thought about it or not, but the consequence of your decision is that it 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 caused harm to your loved ones, to others, and you know you cannot control that, and you have no control over that any longer. You have forfeited your rights to that based on the action that you took. So if the person decides to say, okay, one, I accept your apologies, but uh, I'm going to move on. I need to forgive, um, but I have to move on. Then that's what it is, because you don't have to rebuild trust and rejoin the union.
Exactly.
If it's
Exactly.
if it's if it's just if it's just not for you, for whatever 101 reasons that you may have between you and your God and you and your family, then um, I, as the offender, have to respect that. I cannot force you to come back into my life because I did something to you that caused you this harm. So I have to be respectful of that, and it could be in those other rare situations where the person may have caused you harm, but
Yes.
they have moved away, they have gone, or they may have passed away, which now makes it virtually impossible. But you still have ownership of your feelings, and then now are left with this, whether the person is there or not. You still have that hurt where you have to address and you have to rebuild trust in yourself.
And Andrew, sometimes this person could bring harm to your family,
Mhm.
bring harm to, just bring chaos into your life.
Right.
That could have been the case before. So I think that when we let go of people, we
Mhm.
need to let them go in love,
Right.
try
Yeah.
not to have any animosity.
Yeah.
Don't go around bad mouthing them to other people,
Right.
you know, but know that, what, if the person should need my help and I can help in any way,
Hmm.
then I'll be more than happy to help them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not wish ill will or anything like
No.
that. But
No. No.
in your heart,
Yeah.
what, I forgive you, but I have to move on. And
Right.
I think it's hard to do at times, but it's
Mhm.
definitely necessary at times.
Right. And like you said, there's sometimes, you may have gone into a relationship, your mom and your dad warned you about it.
Yes.
You knew deep in your soul that this person, that there was something wrong. There is some, but you thought that the person would have changed, or you thought you could have changed the person, or whatever 101 reasons. But um, sometimes, um, because you weren't supposed to be in the relationship, then probably 18 years later, this now is the result of you disobeying your parents, or disobeying
Yeah.
your that your intuition, that God spirit speaking to you, that God is saying, okay, well, I showed you, I gave you 18 years, and here
You
we
know
are.
what?
Yeah.
I remember my grandma saying to me that basically that she had told my mom that she shouldn't marry my dad.
Mm,
you know?
mm,
And it's like, and their marriage lasted maybe what, 11, 12 years where they were actually together. But
mm.
sometimes parents have a way of seeing these things. They know that you're not a match. They know that what, for
Mhm.
whatever reason,
Right.
that these people don't belong together. But I think
Mhm.
you have to let people find out for themselves, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Right. I mean, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
How important is communication in the process of rebuilding trust? And I have to throw
Yeah.
this out there.
Mm.
If I am working on getting back with someone and that insecurity is there, it's
Mhm.
there.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
if every time you see this person talking to someone else and you
Hmm.
feel whatever.
Yeah.
Now, I believe if you genuinely want to make it work, that you have to work through those tough times. This
Right. Yeah.
person may cry and scream at you, get
Right.
angry, but you
Yeah.
have to let them work it out and
Right.
get to the point where they see that, you know what,
Hmm.
he's not going anywhere. He's really serious this time. And I'm
Right.
not saying to behave like a fool and make a
Hmm.
person's life miserable,
Right.
but I believe if you're feeling scared, you're
Mhm.
feeling insecure, you
Yeah.
just don't
Yeah.
you don't feel like you measure up. I think you
Hmm.
should be able to say it to the person, but that person should be able to
Receive
talk
it.
to you, receive it,
Hmm.
but at the same time, look, if they have to hold you while they're talking to you,
Right.
help to reassure you, because I think
Right.
this is where a lot of love and intimacy needs to be built. And I'm not talking
Yeah.
about sex,
Right.
but I think this is like we're
Hmm.
sitting, we're having deep conversation,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but we really need to get on a deeper, more intimate level, right?
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
vulnerability, the
Yeah.
anger, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the situation.
Right.
So,
Right.
how important is this? Because listen, I don't believe nothing should be left on the table
Right.
when it comes to this if we're really serious about it.
Hmm. Hmm. And as you're saying that, Bree, um, all that we're talking about here in rebuilding trust, is only uh, uh, a deferment of processes that we should have taken place before
Yes.
marriage. So it's almost as if to say, uh, you know life is giving us this second opportunity to really um, put all of our cards on the table, to be vulnerable, and to uh, truly see each other, the good and the bad, as you say, and be able to love each other um, in light of all these things. So now we are going to we have this structure, and we're sharing, we're detailing. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things that I need from you um, over the next 6 months or 2 years, so that I we can rebuild trust in the relationship, so that I can feel safe and protected with you again. And in that time, Brie, what's going to happen is, as we share our social media profile, our phones, it may be that it may be that uh, when you're leaving work, you send a text to say, okay, I'm leaving work at 5:15, and I'm going to be stopping and picking up grocery, and then I should be home by 10 minutes, past 6. Then that may be the routine, because I need to know where you are at a certain time, because then if you're not, then my brain starts to flood, and I'm thinking that you're not where you're supposed to be. You're with this other person, and then I'm going to be sitting home waiting for you to push the door, and I'm just going to launch at you with all of these assumptions that's in my head. And okay, so we have to be able to have that structure, and we have to uh, be very mindful to make sure that we are sticking to the game plan, and we're doing what is expected of us. And then, even when the hurt person feels this flooding coming on, you have to sit with them, and you have to be sensitive to say, okay, honey, how can I help you in this moment? What else can I do? What more can I do? You have to be that sensitive to that person, and to their emotions. And it's over time. It's when that person. It's when you're telling that person, okay, you know, I'm going for lunch with Tom, but two other female coworkers are coming along with me, and then you get that text, and you're like, oh, it's okay. you didn't have to say that. So now you're now at that place now where you are now comfortable and you're now confident because he or she
It's better
has
to tell her the truth, though, right?
right,
Because don't assume that if I tell her the truth, she's going to blow up at me. Because if you hide it, it may come out, right?
right,
So why did you hide it?
right,
We have to be comfortable with telling the truth,
right.
no matter what we think this other person's response or reaction is going to be,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So that whole communication, um, it could take one couple 6 months. It may take another couple 2 years. It may take another couple 18 years. But what will happen over time, as long as both are committed, um, the the incidents will be less frequent. That's
Mikey
all I'm
said
saying.
Mikey's saying if you feel like the GPS is necessarily for a relationship to work, you're most likely twice defeated. And
No, I understand
I
that, but
totally get that. Now, let me
I
say
get
this,
that.
Andrew.
Yeah,
We're
I get
talking
that.
about a relationship where we're rebuilding, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
we're
right,
rebuilding. We're
we're
rebuilding.
rebuilding.
And and
Now,
and and if that's what it takes, then guess what? That's what it takes. But you have to be committed. And Bree, I tell you, in this whole research, I just got one of those aha moments. What happens? And this happens to men and women, but I would probably say in a non-scientific way that probably this happens to men most, but I can see where it happens to women too. Um, you would find that the man that caused this breach in the trust, in the marriage, in the relationship, he is not necessarily going to this other woman simply because of something that his wife isn't doing, right? What tends to happen, Brie, is, or even for the woman, she feels as though my husband no longer looks at me the way how he used to. So there is something within that woman, within that man, where they feel lost in the current relationship. They don't. So what happens is this other person, this third party, makes them feel alive. There's this person notices that she came to work with her nails done. The husband didn't notice it. The co-worker noticed that your hair is different. Oh, you lost weight. Oh, the report you did a fantastic job on it. Your husband never inquires about how your day goes. And the same for the man. He's at work. Someone um, comments on the work that he's doing, how good he's doing it, the job that he's doing. He doesn't get that from his wife. So what tends to happen is the marriage, the relationship becomes stagnant to the point where both are just in it and they're no longer alive. And this person does something to them. So it really has nothing to do with the wife,
well,
as
we
much.
just talked about communication,
Yeah.
Andrew. So if you're feeling that way, right? Isn't this where that we should have had that conversation,
So
right?
this,
We should have
right. So
had this.
this,
We should have had like you're not. I don't feel that you're into me anymore. Whatever it
right.
is, I feel
Exactly.
we need to. But that's what we talked about. We talked about earlier. Honesty
Communicate,
in
honest communication.
communication, right?
Right. So now, if that is the root cause, if he's explaining to you in his apology that this was why, I had this relationship, or this is why I said what I said, then as part of the contract, Bree, as part of the contract, you're going to say, okay, honey, I hear what you're saying, but in repairing our marriage, how can I make you feel alive? And then I am also going to be honest to say to you, these are the ways how you can make me feel alive. And what happens is as you're sharing your social media and you're doing your GPS and whatever, um, because of this conflict and this, and you're now both opening up to each other and learning how to reignite this new marriage, you're not going to be, there's a possibility of you creating a marriage, a relationship that is exponentially better than the one that you guys had. That older one is now dead, and you now have this fantastic opportunity to be alive again. It's a great opportunity. It's very possible to rebuild the trust. Both parties have to be 100% committed.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. Explain the meaning of turn the other cheek. And I believe that this scripture is too
Mm,
often misinterpreted. This
mhm,
misinterpretation has kept many in abusive
mhm,
situations. And I ask you that because, listen, I remember when I decided I was done with my ex-husband, I was
mhm.
filing for divorce. And
Right.
I'm telling you, the guilt trips.
Mhm,
Oh, you got to think about his soul salvation.
mhm,
Oh, you got to work it out. I got tired of hearing it because,
mhm,
listen, for all my life, I'd been a codependent individual.
mhm,
I finally got tired of this individual, and I was
mhm,
like, you know what? He's not changing. I'm over it.
mhm.
I'm over it. So I wanted to move on.
Right.
So, what does it mean in your opinion? Because I believe turn the other cheek. I'm thinking, yeah, forgiveness, but I'm not thinking keep on abusing me, keep on mistreating me, keep on cheating, keep on doing whatever. So please, what
Yeah.
is your interpretation of turn the other cheek?
Yeah. As often as the Bible talks about love, it talks about forgiveness.
Yes,
So there's so many Bible verses and parables and stories that
yes,
has the theme of forgiveness in it, because in 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 this human relationship that we all have,
yes,
um, for love to exist, forgiveness has to be part of that formula, right?
yes.
So it's integral. Um, what what I like about so you're talking about I think it's like Matthew 5 about turning the other cheek verses like
Hmm.
38 to 40
Yeah,
whatever, right? Um, um, so the writer is really emphasizing generosity here, right? And so he's referring to the Mosaic laws from Deuteronomy, where God was detailing to them um, that the punishment for the offense should be equal, an eye for an eye. But we're not saying to literally take someone's eye
right, right,
out,
right, right.
but it is saying that the punishment should equate to the offense, right? Here, the writer is taking it a step further and saying, listen, um, we're not just doing an eye for an eye. We're talking complete generosity here. We're talking turning the other cheek, right? So that's what he's really talking about. He's talking about you have as often as the person asks for forgiveness, you have to give it. Um, so that is the point. Um, we sort of, you know, uh, like you said, pastors back in the days would use that as a way of um, forcing someone to remain in an abusive relationship. I don't believe personally that is what God would intend for us, but I can still forgive you
Yes.
abusing me.
And
I don't have to
it's
stay with.
important in forgiveness, right? I
Yeah,
think when we release a person and we have forgiven them, it sets us free.
right.
Because when we have moved on and we're holding on to animosity,
Hmm.
we're still stuck to that person,
You're
whether
still
we
you're, right,
believe it or not,
right. The sin is still there.
Yes.
The sin and
Yes.
the pain of the sin is still there.
Yes.
What we want is to liberate people, and we to be
Yes.
liberated also. So we're
Yes.
going to forgive, and I can still love you from afar.
Yes.
But so that is the gospel of loving and forgiving. Um, for me to hold that animosity against you, that is me sinning also, participating in some other sin.
It
So
eats
that's not
away at
helpful.
your soul. It's so not worth it. I think some
Yeah,
of us enjoy holding on to grudges and things like that,
yeah,
but it
yeah.
eats away, and I think it's so not worth it. So
Right.
I'll move on to the next question, Andrew. How many times should we attempt to rebuild trust if we are dealing with repeat offenses?
Right, right. Which then reminds me of this other parable, right?
Yeah, the
So,
70
oh,
times. Is that the
no, no,
one?
no. It was
70
it was
times
Peter.
7
It was Peter, like in
or
Matthew
70?
18.
Yeah.
Matthew 18. So Peter is talking to Jesus, and he's like, how many times should I forgive my brother? 7 times 7. And Jesus replies, no, 70 times 7. Like, no, um, you need to stop worrying about you and your feelings and focus on the soul salvation of the other person. Just as how I, the Lord, is forgiving you. I mean, 70 times 7 is just forgiving me in just one day, really as a sinner. And I'm calling myself a Christian. So if I receive Christ, um, then I have to forgive you as oftentimes as you request forgiveness. And again, that goes back to what the boundaries we can set, right?
Yes.
But it
I'm glad you
has to
said
be,
that.
it has to be. I have to be willing, and this goes right in even into that Bible, the Lord's Prayer, that He tells us that we would be forgiven to the extent that we forgive others.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so this is critical to our own salvation. Forgiveness,
Okay.
forgiveness,
So,
and love is
yes, definitely important. Why is it important to be fully committed to the process if we're rebuilding trust?
it's
But if
just
we
one word.
know that, you know what, like we said earlier,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
know you can't commit, you
yeah,
know you can't follow through on what you said,
yeah.
why drag someone through that
Right,
misery
right.
at
Yeah,
the end
yeah,
of the day?
yeah, yeah. It can't be because of the kids, or it can't be because of you know
Or you don't want
my
to see that person move on with someone else. You're trying to hold on.
right, or you just are so dependent um, on this person and the status that you can't see yourself living, having life, a fruitful life, a bountiful life. And this again comes into having a, a Christian foundation.
Yes.
But if you're just out in the world and you find yourself just hanging on um, in these abusive relationships, you uh, you need to get counseling. Even if there's no counseling to get the relationship together, you have to recognize and come to that point where your personal health, your self-love, your growth.
Which is leading to the last question for the evening. How
Mm.
important is self-love and
Oh wow.
self-compassion
Mm.
during this process?
Oh yeah, 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 yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you have to, you got hurt. The person is coming to apologize. You have, you have to ask yourself, do I want this relationship again? Um, what did that hurt do to me? Um, uh, do I love myself enough to be able to love this person again? Am I willing to open up my heart to this person again? Do I have that capacity to? Um, and and those are personal questions. But
Yes.
but um, you if you're self assured and you can see that the person is genuine, then I would say go for it, because
Genuine. If they're
it can only
genuine.
produce a better relationship. It will never produce a worse relationship. If you're both totally committed to it, it's guaranteed that you're going to have a better relationship. It's going to take some time, but it's going to be a better relationship. But you have to be so centered um, in yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Andrew, before I ask you for your closing thoughts,
Mhm.
I would just say my personal opinion is,
Mhm.
if you think the person is trustworthy, if you know in your heart you're both committed to the process,
Yeah.
then by all means go for it.
Right.
But if you know in your heart this is just another game, I'm
Mhm.
going to go through all this misery all over again,
Right.
situations like that, they become toxic.
Yeah.
It becomes a distraction in your life.
Mhm.
I think it can take you away from your purpose.
Mhm.
It can affect your walk with God.
Right.
I think if you have children, what are we teaching the children?
Right.
When you think of you hear these words like generational curses.
Right.
Well, I think it's a generational cycle of behavior.
Yeah. Right.
When a child grows up seeing abuse,
Right.
and it goes from one generation to the next. I
Right.
think
Right.
we have to be strong enough to walk away when it is necessary. But
Right.
if a situation can be worked out, you're both willing to put in the work, I
Right.
say by all means go for it, as long
Exactly.
as you know this is a sincere thing. What are your closing thoughts, Andrew?
I completely agree. So the takeaway really is it possible? The answer is a resounding yes. You
Yes.
can rebuild trust. And even if you can't rebuild trust with the other person, you owe it to yourself to rebuild that inner trust, so
Yeah.
that you can be a whole person. And when you enter into future relationships, you're entering not with baggage. So yes, the work has to be done. The work has to be done.
Now, before we close, do you think it's a good idea for both parties to go through individual counseling and then come together with, in couples counseling?
In um, in most cases, yes. In most cases, we go straight to couples counseling, and then midway we probably recognize that, you know what, um, I need to be working on some things for myself
Yes.
outside of working together on the relationship. So yes, in most cases, you will recognize that you contributed to the demise of the relationship because of stuff that you brought in, or
Yes.
yeah. So
The
yes.
generational thing that we learned, more than likely, that
Yeah.
we brought in, which we'll pass on. Mikey saying, really appreciate listening, learning something new from both of you always. Mikey, thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
God
you
bless. God
very
bless.
much. Andrew, I really enjoyed this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yes.
I learn a lot from every podcast.
Mhm.
I can look back and see my shortcomings in the past, but I
Mhm.
can also see my growth. And
Right. Right.
one of the things I appreciate about myself now, and it's only by the grace of God, is
Mhm.
knowing that it's okay to be patient. It's
Right.
okay to trust him for that partner,
Mhm.
because I think too often we think we have to be in a relationship to be
Mhm.
fulfilled. But
Right.
God fulfills us. It's like a
Right.
lot of what we're chasing sometimes, only God can give it to us.
Right.
Another human being cannot fulfill me that way. Another human
Right.
being cannot fill that hole in my soul. So I
Right.
think it's very important to really understand why we choose to be in relationships.
Mhm.
What do we want from that relationship?
Right.
Am
Yeah.
I looking for this person to make me feel loved and make me
Mhm.
feel wanted? Why? you know, we have to ask ourselves ourselves these
Yeah.
questions,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Completely.
Yeah. Andrew, like I said, I truly enjoyed this
Yeah.
conversation. I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. And
Yeah.
once again, Mikey, thank you so much. And for those who watch the replay, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Take care, everyone.